Thank you very much, Mr. Mahalingam, for such an erudite presentation. I must say that you clarified the matter in a very beautiful manner. Friends, if you notice that bag that we gave you, this is a resolution, draft resolution. Now we have given this draft resolution because it is residue. There must be some concrete action that will be left to us to do. Therefore, if this resolution, this is a draft resolution, one might improve over the language, everything. If you have any suggestion to make, then kindly all levels, the press, the government, maximum propaganda as far as the refugees of the forgotten people of Bhutan are concerned. Now the next speaker, he is the Bureau Chief with the IANA.
Happen to have had experience of. I've been a professional journalist for the last about 2 decades, and my last full-time assignment as a journalist was with the news agency called Indo-Asian News Service. It is the largest independent wire service of India, and it basically specifically focuses on diaspora issues. And I was working there as executive editor. So I had the opportunity to track diaspora-related issues for the last almost about 6 years exclusively. So currently I continue to work with the civil society, write a few columns here and there, and I'm trying to put together basically a book on violation of rights of Indian diaspora. So I'll just give you a brief kind of overview of what is the media scenario in Bhutan and what role media was supposed to play and why it has not been able to play that kind of role. See, Bhutan had largely, basically officially only the government controlled media before 2008. There was one newspaper, major newspaper called Kyunsen, which circulated 6 days a week. It is published in 2 languages, English and the Bhutanese language. Beginning in April 2006, there was another paper which came up, which was called Bhutan Times. It was the first privately owned newspaper, so you can imagine the kind of situation media is there in Bhutan. In 2008, then we had Bhutan Today, another English daily newspaper, which was launched there. In late September 2009, the first financial newspaper of Bhutan was launched. Its name was Business Bhutan. And in December 2009, a monthly news magazine, which is pretty popular there now, it's called Drukpa. It was launched. Now when we come to this is basically largely the print scenario. So it continues to remain. There are a number of privately owned newspapers, but they are facing basically huge problems. And there are several reasons for this. See, one of the reasons for this is that according to media survey of 2008, 48% of the people who were surveyed, they could not read. So the newspapers have very low circulation, one. Second thing is that the transport costs of distributing the newspaper are very high. And third thing is that after television was introduced there, and that's another interesting fact, that Bhutan was the last country in the world to introduce television. It was introduced, I guess, in 1999, like around that. So, and then later on, initially when it was introduced, the cable television was not introduced, then cable television was introduced. So, the media in Bhutan is in a very nascent state, one. It has around, if you take the television channels, there is the Bhutan Broadcasting Service, which was established in 1973. It used to run a radio station. Initially it was a short-wave radio station, then it turned into FM, then it turned into a full-fledged radio broadcasting service. And later on it is BBS which launched basically the television. So the television is largely basically state-owned. The newspaper, largest circulated newspaper, continues to be state-owned. The rest of the newspapers are not state-owned, or the magazines are not state-owned, but they are de facto in control of the government because they largely survive on the advertisement from the government. So you cannot write anything against the establishment there. Third thing is that now when we come to the online medium, which we have seen has played an important role, especially like in Middle East. The irony is, and it's a very unfortunate situation there. The last data which I read, there are only around 20,000 internet users in Bhutan, and there are around 25,000 landline connections, and there are around 25,000 mobile connections. So that's basically the state of affairs in Bhutan. So now it's you hardly see in during the last 2 decades of my career, and I spent largely time in Delhi and traveled abroad also, but I could not come across a single Bhutanese journalist who has been covering the Ministry of External Affairs briefings or who has been covering extensively filing reports from India. Neither any of the major Indian newspapers or television channels have a correspondent in Bhutan. So there is virtually no flow of information from Bhutan to the global district, and there is virtually no flow of information from countries like India or from the globe to Bhutanese people. So in that kind of a scenario, frankly speaking, the media here doesn't have even an idea that what kind of violations are taking place in Bhutan, because there is virtually no flow of information. The only time when media goes to Bhutan is when the Prime Minister or the Home Minister goes there and there is a junket of journalists. So that's the only time when journalists go there. In the Indian media, ironically, the neighboring countries are pretty low on the agenda when it comes to foreign coverage, except what you can say Pakistan. So, and also Indian newspapers, Indian media houses do not have the tendency to post journalists abroad. You must have seen yourself that foreign coverage gets very low priority in most of the media, whether it is television channels or newspapers. They have the least number of pages, and we have big stories on US and Europe, but we do not hardly have any stories about what is happening to India's interest in the neighboring countries. For example, what I mean to say is that there is largely a neglect of, there is lack of perception in the media, there is lack of information, and that gap has to be bridged. And I'll be very frank, I do not have an idea how this gap can be bridged. I think probably initiatives like this, there are a lot of people who are in the know of things, and these are the kind of things that they can be documented and then shared with media, so we can evoke the interest of media. So media so far, the role it was supposed to play, it has not played. One. Second thing is the big